Captain Taeyang Park stood before the massive doors of the council chamber and took a deep breath. Behind him, 3 other humans waited in silence. They had traveled for months to reach this place, a space station orbiting a dying star at the edge of known space. This was where the Galactic Concordance made all their important decisions. Minji Kang adjusted her tablet one more time. She was the scientist of the group, and she had prepared hundreds of pages of data about Earth and humanity. Next to her stood Do-hyun Choi, a tall man with metal implants visible on his arms and neck. He was their security chief. The last member of their team was Hyeju Nam, a young woman who spoke 17 alien languages and had studied xenobiology for 10 years. The doors opened without a sound. The chamber beyond was enormous, easily the size of 3 football fields. Strange beings filled the tiered seats that rose up in circles around a central platform. Some floated in the air. Others stood on multiple legs. A few looked like nothing more than clouds of colored light. Taeyang walked forward with steady steps. His team followed. They had practiced this moment 1,000 times, but nothing could truly prepare them for seeing so many alien species in one place. These were the rulers of the galaxy, the oldest and most powerful civilizations known to exist. A voice echoed through the chamber, though no one seemed to speak. "Humans of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Concordance. State your case." Taeyang reached the center platform and looked up at the beings surrounding him. "Honored members of the Concordance, humanity comes before you in peace and friendship. We have achieved faster-than-light travel. We have established 12 colony worlds across 3 star systems. We have learned your languages and studied your cultures. We seek to join the community of advanced civilizations and contribute what we can to the greater good of all species." Minji stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the air above them. Cities, farms, oceans, and forests. Then images of human colonies on distant worlds, mining operations on asteroids, the great shipyards orbiting Mars where humanity built its vessels. "We bring technological innovation," Minji said. "We bring resources. We bring a desire to learn and to share knowledge. Humanity has overcome countless challenges on our home world. We believe we can help solve problems that face the Concordance." One of the floating beings spoke, its voice like crystal chimes. "Your species has existed for how long in your current form?" "Approximately 300,000 years, Minji answered. "And how long have you had spaceflight capability?" "Just under 300 years. A sound like laughter rippled through the chamber, though not all of it seemed kind. The crystalline being continued. "We are the Veltari. Our civilization has existed for over 4 million years. We achieved spaceflight when your ancestors were still learning to use simple tools." Taeyang kept his expression neutral. "We do not claim to be the oldest or most advanced species. We simply ask for the chance to prove ourselves worthy partners." Another voice spoke from the upper tiers. This one sounded like 100 voices speaking in perfect unison. "We are the Orthani. We have examined your history. Your world has seen over 16,000 wars in your recorded history alone. Your people still fight each other over resources, territory, and beliefs. You have weapons on your homeworld capable of destroying all life on the planet. How can such a violent species join a peaceful alliance?" Do-hyun spoke before Taeyang could answer. "Yes, we have fought wars. Yes, we have weapons. But we also have peace treaties. We have united our world under a single government. We have turned our weapons into tools for mining and construction. We learn from our mistakes." The Orthani responded immediately. "You learned only after nearly destroying yourselves twice. Your species came within moments of nuclear war on 3 separate occasions. This is not wisdom. This is luck." A new being spoke, one that looked vaguely humanoid but had 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. "I am Merchant Prince Velk of the Kreshna. Let us speak plainly. Your technology is crude. Your resources are limited. Your territory is tiny. What exactly do you offer that the Concordance needs?" Taeyang felt the trap in the question, but he had no choice but to answer honestly. "We offer potential. We offer a different perspective. We offer—" "Nothing," the Krishna interrupted. "You offer nothing we cannot obtain elsewhere from more stable and peaceful species." The crystalline Veltari spoke again, and this time its voice carried absolute authority. "The Concordance will now deliberate on humanity's petition. You will wait outside." Taeyang wanted to protest, to make more arguments, but Hyeju touched his arm gently. They had been warned that interrupting a Veltari speaker was a grave insult. The four humans turned and walked back toward the doors. In a small waiting room, they sat in silence. Minji kept checking her tablet, looking at the data they had presented. Do-hyun paced like a caged animal. Hyeju stared at the wall, her expression unreadable. Taeyang simply waited, his hands folded in his lap. 17 minutes later, the doors opened again. They were summoned back inside. The Veltari speaker floated at the center of the chamber now, surrounded by a nimbus of soft light. Its voice was cold and final. The Concordance has reached a decision. Humanity is denied membership. Your species is too young, too violent, and too unstable. Your history demonstrates a pattern of conflict and destruction. Your world still harbors weapons of mass extinction. You wage war among yourselves even as you reach for the stars. Taeyang felt the words like physical blows, but he forced himself to remain standing straight. The Concordance requires a minimum of 10,000 years of demonstrated peaceful civilization before any species may be reconsidered for membership. You will leave this station immediately. You will not return. Any attempt to establish contact with Concordance members will be considered an act of aggression. This session is concluded. The chamber began to empty as the various species departed through different exits. Taeyang stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. 30 years of preparation, decades of work by thousands of people, all dismissed in 17 minutes. As they turned to leave, Taeyang stopped. He looked up at the Veltari speaker, which was still floating in place. "I have one question," he said clearly. The Veltari's light pulsed with what might have been annoyance. "Speak quickly, human. If we are too violent for your Concordance, if our technology is too dangerous, if our species is unfit for membership..." Taeyang paused and let his words carry through the nearly empty chamber. Then why did 43 different Concordant species purchase human military technology through intermediaries last year alone? The silence that followed was absolute. The Veltari's light flickered. Several species who had been leaving stopped in their tracks. Taeyang continued, his voice steady and calm. "Why do your merchants buy our weapons if we are too violent? Why do your governments hire human security forces if we are too dangerous? Why do you trade with us in secret while refusing us openly?" No answer came. The Veltari simply turned and floated away through a door that appeared in the wall. The chamber emptied completely, leaving the four humans standing alone. On the journey back to their ship, none of them spoke. Only when they were safely aboard the Soul's Pride, their vessel headed back toward human space, did Taeyang finally allow himself to show emotion. He slammed his fist against the wall of the bridge. "They used us," he said quietly. "They want our technology, our innovations, our soldiers. But they want us weak. They want us dependent. They want us begging for scraps of recognition while they profit from our work." Minji pulled up data on her screen. The Veltari control access to the ancient hyperspace gates. The Orthani control the largest military fleets. The Kreshna control most trade routes. They have divided the galaxy among themselves, and they do not want competition. Do-hyun nodded slowly. "They see us as a threat." "Good," Taeyang said. He activated the communication system that would send a message back to Earth. It would take weeks to arrive, but his words would reach the United Nations Council eventually. His face appeared on the screen and he began to speak. "This is Captain Taeyang Park. The Concordance has refused humanity's petition for membership. They claim we are too violent, too young, too dangerous." He paused and allowed himself a small, cold smile. "They refused us because we are dangerous. They want us weak and dependent on their approval. They want to use us without respecting us." He leaned forward and his voice grew stronger. "I say we show them exactly how dangerous humans can be when we are unified. We do not need their permission to exist. We do not need their approval to thrive. If they will not give us a place at their table, then we will build our own table, and it will be big enough for everyone they have ever rejected." The message ended. Taeyang sat back in his chair and looked out at the stars passing by the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Concordants continued their ancient games of power and politics. But humanity would not wait 10,000 years for permission. The real work was about to begin. 5 years had passed since the rejection, and the galaxy had changed in ways the Concordants never expected. Admiral Taeyang Park stood on the bridge of the Incheon, humanity's newest and largest warship. Outside the viewports, 47 human colonies orbited distant stars. Earth's territory had doubled, and human ships traveled routes that other species had declared too dangerous or unprofitable to explore. "Admiral, we are approaching the target coordinates," the navigation officer reported. Taeyang nodded. Today would either be humanity's greatest triumph or a disaster that would set them back decades. Possibly both. On the main screen, a young man appeared. Jiho Sung was barely 30 years old, but he had become one of humanity's most important strategists. He had been Taeyang's student at the Naval Academy, and now he coordinated operations across 12 sectors of space. "The science team confirms the readings," Jiho said. "It is definitely a Nexus gate, the 12th one." Taeyang allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Nexus gates were ancient structures, built by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. They allowed instant travel across thousands of light years. The Concordance controlled 11 of them, and those 11 gates were the foundation of their power. Every major trade route, every military deployment, every political decision, all of it depended on controlling access to the gates. For centuries, rumors had spoken of a 12th gate, lost somewhere in the Broken Reaches. The Broken Reaches were a region of space filled with radiation storms, collapsing stars, and gravitational anomalies. Most species considered it worthless and deadly. Humans had spent 3 years mapping every dangerous kilometer of the Broken Reaches. They had lost 14 ships and over 200 lives doing it. But they had found the gate. "Minji, what is the gate's status?" Taeyang asked. Minji Kang appeared on another screen. She was now the head of humanity's largest research facility, orbiting a moon in the Kepler system. Gray streaked her hair and exhaustion lined her face, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "The gate is intact and functional," she said, "but it has no power source. It has been dormant for at least 800,000 years. To activate it, we would need a power generation system beyond anything currently available in known space." "How far beyond?" Taeyang asked. "By concordance standards, about 300 years of development," Taeyang smiled. "And by human standards?" Minji smiled back. "We can have it ready in 6 months. The past 5 years had seen an explosion of human innovation. Freed from the need to impress the concordance, human scientists had taken risks that other species would never dare. They combined technologies in ways that seemed reckless to aliens but made perfect sense to humans. They had reverse-engineered concordance equipment purchased through intermediaries and improved upon the designs. A young woman appeared on a third screen. Isilbey was a prodigy, barely 25 years old, but she had revolutionized fusion power systems. "We are already building the power station," she said. "It will use a combination of human fusion reactors and modified concordance energy containment fields." "It should work, probably." "Probably," someone asked from off-screen. 97% chance of success, Isil clarified. 3% chance of catastrophic failure that destroys the gate and everything within 100,000 kilometers. Do-hyun Choi, now in charge of all human military engineering, laughed. "I have worked with worse odds. Begin construction." The next 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Humanity poured resources into the Broken Reaches. Construction crews worked in rotating shifts, building a massive power station next to the dormant gate. The radiation made it deadly work, but volunteers lined up by the thousands. This was humanity's chance to change everything. The Concordance noticed, of course. Their long-range sensors detected the unusual activity in the Broken Reaches. They sent messages demanding to know what humanity was doing. Taeyang ignored them all. Finally, the day came. The power station was complete. The Nexus gate sat silent and dark, a ring of strange metal 50 kilometers in diameter, covered in markings no one could fully translate. Taeyang stood in the command center, surrounded by dozens of screens showing different angles of the gate. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and political leaders from Earth all watched and waited. This moment had consumed half a decade of work and cost them billions in resources. "All systems are ready," Isil reported. "Power generation is stable. Energy containment fields are holding. We can begin activation on your order, Admiral." Taeyang looked at the gate one more time. If this worked, humanity would control access to an entirely new region of space. They would have their own Nexus gate. Independent of Concordance control, they would be truly free. If it failed, they would have wasted years and given the Concordance a reason to laugh at human arrogance. "Activate the gate," Taeyang ordered. The power station hummed to life. Energy flowed through cables thicker than a man's body, pouring into the ancient structure. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the gate began to glow. Softly at first, then brighter and brighter. The strange markings on its surface lit up in sequences, patterns appearing and disappearing faster than the eye could follow. The space inside the ring shimmered and twisted. Alarms blared. "Energy readings are off the scale," someone shouted. "Hold steady," Minji ordered calmly. "This is within expected parameters." The shimmer inside the ring stabilized, and suddenly it was not empty space anymore. It was a tunnel, a passage, a door to somewhere else. Through it, they could see stars that no human had ever observed before. The gate was active. Cheers erupted across every human facility monitoring the activation. People hugged each other, cried, laughed. They had done the impossible. But Taeyang remained focused. "Send through the probe." A small, unmanned vessel flew into the gate and vanished. Seconds later, telemetry began streaming back. The probe had emerged thousands of light years away, in a region of space that would have taken years to reach by conventional travel. The gate worked perfectly. "Broadcast the message," Taeyang said quietly. Yuna Huang, who had become Earth's prime minister 3 years ago, appeared on screens across human space and beyond. She was a small woman with iron in her spine and fire in her voice. "People of Earth and all humanity's colonies, today we have activated the 12th Nexus Gate," she began. "We did this without permission from the Concordance. We did this with our own hands, our own minds, and our own courage." The message was broadcast openly, on frequencies that every spacefaring species could receive. Taeyang knew the Concordance would detect it immediately. "That was the point," Yuna continued. 5 years ago, the Concordance refused us membership. They told us to wait 10,000 years. They called us too young, too violent, too dangerous. Today we prove that humanity does not wait for permission. Taeyang himself appeared on the next broadcast. "The Concordance claims authority over the Nexus Gates and the territories they connect. We reject this claim. Humanity declares sovereign control over the 12th Nexus Gate and all star systems accessible through it. We claim the broken reaches and everything beyond as human territory." The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. Within hours, messages flooded in from every direction. The Veltari demanded that humanity cease all operations immediately. The Orthani called it an act of war. The Kreshna sent carefully worded inquiries about trade opportunities. Taeyang had expected this. He recorded one more message and sent it to every known species in the galaxy. "To all civilizations, whether members of the Concordance or not," he said, "humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist. We are no longer begging for a seat at your table. Any species that wishes to negotiate trade agreements, alliances, or passage through human-controlled space may contact us as equals. We will treat all fairly and with respect." He paused and his expression hardened. "But understand this. We defend what is ours. Any military action against human territory will be met with total resistance. We are done being dismissed and underestimated." The Concordance Council convened an emergency session. The Orthani argued for immediate military intervention. "Send a fleet to the broken reaches. Destroy the human gate. Crush this rebellion before it could spread." But the Veltari hesitated. They had underestimated humanity once. The humans had found and activated a Nexus Gate in just 5 years, something that should have been technologically impossible for a species of their age. What else could they do? The Kreshna saw opportunity. Several merchant princes began secretly contacting human representatives, offering deals that would benefit both species. If humanity controlled a new gate, there would be new trade routes, new markets, new profits. Why fight when they could profit instead? Other species watched and wondered. 14 small civilizations that had also been rejected by the Concordance began reaching out to humanity. If humans could defy the ancient powers, perhaps others could as well. In the command center of the Incheon, Taeyang watched the responses flood in. Some hostile, some curious, some hopeful. The galaxy was reacting exactly as Jiho had predicted. "We have kicked over an anthill," Do-Yun observed. "Yes," Taeyang agreed. "And now we will see which ants try to bite us and which ones decide to build new hills." Minji pulled up a star map showing human territory before. 2 years after humanity claimed the 12th gate, the galaxy was fracturing. Commander Sang-Hoon Lim reviewed the intelligence reports with growing concern. 14 species had broken away from the Concordance to trade openly with humanity. The economic benefits were too good to ignore. Human manufacturing was faster and cheaper. Human mercenaries were effective and reliable. Human territory offered opportunities that had not existed before, but this success had made enemies. The Orthani had been quiet for too long, and that worried Sang-hoon more than any threat. He was aboard the defense station Guardian 1, which orbited near the 12th gate. This was humanity's most important strategic position, and Sang-hoon commanded its protection. He was a career military officer, methodical and careful, and right now his instincts screamed that something was wrong. "Commander, we have a priority message from Agent Gyun-oh," the communications officer announced. Sang-hoon pulled up the encrypted transmission. Gyun-oh was one of humanity's best intelligence operatives, embedded deep in concordance space. His reports were always accurate and always expensive to obtain. The message was brief and terrifying. "The Orthani have assembled a purge fleet. 6 species, 300 warships. Objective is complete destruction of human gate and occupation of all human territory. ETA 4 weeks. Sang-hoon immediately contacted Admiral Taeyang, who was on Earth attending a diplomatic conference. The old admiral's face appeared on screen, and his expression grew grim as he read the report. 300 ships, Taeyang said quietly. "We have maybe 100 combat-ready vessels in the entire fleet." "Yes, sir. They plan to overwhelm us with pure numbers." "Recommendations?" Sang-hoon pulled up tactical projections. "We fortify every approach to the gate. We call in every favor we have with our trading partners. We evacuate all non-military personnel from the broken reaches. And we prepare for the possibility that we might lose." Taeyang was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "We do not lose the gate. If we lose it, we lose everything we have built. Humanity becomes prey again. Then we need a miracle, sir. Then we will make one. I will handle the political side. You focus on the military preparation, and Sang-hoon, hold that gate, no matter what it costs." The next 4 weeks were frantic. Every human colony mobilized. Civilian ships were converted for military use. Factories that made mining equipment switched to producing weapons. Volunteers by the hundreds of thousands signed up for military service, knowing they might be heading into a battle they could not win. Minji Kang's research teams developed new weapons at a pace that terrified even her. Fusion mines that could destroy ships 50 kilometers away. Missiles that could accelerate to relativistic speeds, hitting with the force of nuclear weapons. And most controversial, the cascading singularity warheads, weapons that created brief controlled black holes that consumed everything nearby. These weapons violate 3 different concordance treaties. Minji told Sang-hoon when she delivered the first batch. "We are not members of the concordance," Sang-hoon replied. "We never signed their treaties." Meanwhile, Admiral Taeyang pursued a different strategy. He met secretly with the Krishna merchant princes, the species most invested in continued trade with humanity. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Taeyang sat across from Prince Velk, the same Krishna who had questioned humanity's worth 7 years ago. "You come seeking help," Velk said. "It was not a question." "I come offering a deal," Taeyang corrected. "If the Orthani destroy us, they will control the 12th gate. They will dictate who uses it and who does not. Your profit margins will collapse." Velk's forearms moved in a gesture that might have been agreement. "Continue." "But if humanity survives, we guarantee the Krishna exclusive trading rights to 30% of all traffic through the gate. For 50 years. 30% is not exclusive. Exclusive means you get to choose which other species can use your 30%. You become gatekeepers to a gate we control. You profit from every transaction, and you gain political influence over dozens of smaller species." Velk was silent, calculating probabilities and profits. "And if we provide military support and you lose anyway? Then you lose some ships but gain respect from the Orthani for trying to maintain order. You can claim you were attempting to mediate. You are asking us to bet on humans against overwhelming odds. I am asking you to bet on the species that found and activated a lost nexus gate in 5 years. The species that went from planetary civilization to galactic power in a decade. The species that refused to wait 10,000 years for permission." Taeyang leaned forward. "Tell me, Prince Velk, have the Orthani ever surprised you? Have they ever innovated? Or do they simply use their numbers to bully everyone into submission?" Velk made a sound like grinding stones. It might have been laughter. "You are arrogant, Admiral, but you make a compelling argument. I will discuss this with my colleagues." 3 days later, the Krishna agreed to the deal. They would not commit their full fleet, but they would send enough ships to make a difference. And more importantly, Their intelligence network would share information about the Orthani fleet's movements. The Purge fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 300 warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the broken reaches. They flew in perfect formation, a demonstration of overwhelming force meant to terrify humanity into surrender. Commander Sang-hoon watched them approach on every screen in his command center. His own fleet looked pitiful by comparison. 98 human warships, 50 converted civilian vessels with makeshift weapons, and a collection of defense platforms anchored near the gate. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer said. Sang-hoon opened a channel to every human vessel. "This is Commander Lim. Today we defend not just a gate but the future of our species. They outnumber us 3-1. They think numbers will win this fight. They are wrong. Numbers have never stopped humans before, and they will not stop us today. Hold your positions. Trust your training. And remember that every child born on a human colony, every family building a new life among the stars, is counting on us. We do not fail them." The Purge fleet sent a transmission. An Orthani commander spoke with the unified voice of its hive mind. "Humans, you have violated galactic order. You have claimed territory without authorization. You have activated ancient technology without permission. Surrender the gate and submit to Concordance authority or be destroyed." Sang-hoon replied calmly, "We do not recognize Concordance authority. This gate is ours. This space is ours. If you want it, come and take it." The Orthani fleet accelerated toward the gate. The battle that followed would be studied by military strategists for generations. Sang-hoon fought with a combination of human creativity and desperate courage. He used the broken reaches itself as a weapon, luring Orthani ships into radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. He deployed the fusion mines in patterns that created deadly kill zones. He used the converted civilian ships as decoys, drawing enemy fire while his warships struck from unexpected angles. But the numbers were overwhelming. For every Orthani ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. Human casualties mounted. The defense platforms fell one by one. Ships that had names and crews that Sang-hoon knew personally vanished in brilliant explosions. And then Ji-woo Park changed everything. She was Taeyang's daughter, a fighter pilot who had inherited her father's stubborn refusal to accept defeat. She commanded a squadron of 12 small fast ships. The Orthani flagship was a massive vessel at the center of their formation. It coordinated the entire fleet through telepathic links. Ji-woo realized that if the flagship died, the fleet would lose coordination. "Guardian 1, this is Falcon Squadron," she transmitted. "We are going for the flagship." "Negative, Falcon Squadron," Sang-hoon replied immediately. "That is a suicide run. Only if we fail. Falcon Squadron, follow me." 12 ships dove into the heart of the Orthani fleet. They were too small and too fast for the big capital ships to track effectively. They dodged, weaved, and accelerated at forces that would have killed unaugmented humans. Ji-woo's squadron lost 4 ships in the first minute, but they reached the flagship. Ji-woo armed every weapon her ship carried and set her reactor to overload. "This is for every human who died defending our home," she shouted and drove her ship directly into the flagship's bridge. The explosion was spectacular. The flagship broke apart and its death scream echoed through the telepathic links of every Orthani in the fleet. For critical seconds, they were stunned, confused, leaderless. Ji-woo had ejected at the last moment, her fighter's emergency pod throwing her clear. She watched the flagship die and transmitted, "Flagship destroyed. Make it count." Sang-hoon seized the moment. "All ships, full attack. Hit them now!" The human fleet surged forward. Ships that had been conserving ammunition unleashed everything they had. The cascading singularity warheads were deployed for the first time, creating brief, terrible voids in space that consumed Orthani vessels. And then the Krishna arrived. 50 merchant vessels, heavily armed and carrying the best equipment their profits could buy, they emerged from the gate itself, hitting the Orthani fleet from behind. The Orthani fleet broke. Some species withdrew immediately, having agreed to join only because they thought it would be an easy victory. 3 years after the Battle of the 12th Gate, the galaxy was transforming. Minho Song sat in his office on Earth, reviewing the latest draft of the Coalition Charter. He was a lawyer by training, a diplomat by necessity, and an architect of change by choice. The document before him would define a new kind of alliance between species, one built on equality rather than hierarchy. The coalition of free systems had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as 7 species seeking an alternative to Concordance domination had become a movement. 23 species were now full members, and 15 more were in negotiation to join. "The section on trade disputes needs work," said Taiyan Yu, entering the office without knocking. She was the coalition's chief diplomat, a job that required her to mediate between species who had never spoken directly before. "The Kreshna want special privileges because they helped us during the battle." "Everyone wants special privileges," Minho replied. "That is the point of the coalition. No one gets special privileges. Every member has equal voice." Taeyeon sat down heavily. "Try explaining equality to species that have operated on hierarchies for 1,000,000 years." Meanwhile, in orbit around the moon Titan, Commander Subin Han oversaw the training of the Coalition Defense Force. She was a veteran of the Battle of the 12th Gate, one of the officers who had served under Sang-Hoon Lim. Now she commanded a fleet made up of ships from a dozen different species. "The Luminar vessels are having trouble coordinating with our tactical network," her second officer reported. "The Luminar were beings of pure energy, and their ships operated on principles that human technology struggled to interface with. Then we adapt," Subin said. "Find a way to make it work. The whole point of this force is that we defend each other. That only works if we can actually fight together." She pulled up a star map showing coalition territory. It was scattered and irregular, nothing like the clean borders the Concordance maintained. But it represented hope for species who had been ignored or oppressed by the ancient powers. The Concordance, meanwhile, was struggling. 7 species had formally withdrawn from membership. 12 more openly defied Veltari directives. The economic damage was severe. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years were disrupted. Ancient alliances were crumbling. The Veltari tried economic warfare. They closed hyperspace routes. They imposed embargoes. They used their remaining allies to strangle coalition trade. But humanity had learned from the rejection years ago. Isol Bey's team had revolutionized hyperspace navigation. Human ships could now travel routes that the ancient gates did not connect. They found shortcuts and alternatives that the Concordance had never bothered to explore. "They are predictable," Isol explained to Minji Kang during a research conference. "They have used the same technology for millennia. They never innovated because they never had to. But we are different. We cannot afford to be predictable." The Concordance's embargoes failed. Coalition trade continued through new routes. Human mining operations on distant asteroids produced raw materials. Human manufacturing facilities built everything from starship engines to farming equipment. Species that joined the coalition found they could prosper without Concordance approval, but not everyone welcomed the changes. The Orthani, still bitter from their defeat, launched a shadow war. Assassinations, sabotage, terrorist attacks on human colonies. They struck from hiding, using agents and proxies, hoping to provoke humanity into an open war that would justify renewed military action. Juan O, the intelligence operative who had warned humanity about the Purge fleet, now directed counterintelligence operations across coalition space. He was a quiet man who preferred shadows to spotlights, and he was very good at his job. "We have identified 17 Orthani cells operating in coalition territory," he reported to Admiral Taiyang during a secure meeting. "They plan to bomb the new gate construction site in the Kepler system. Can you stop them?" "I already have. But Admiral, this is not about stopping individual attacks. The Orthani are testing us. They want to see if we will retaliate against their homeworlds. And will we?" Guno smiled coldly. "I have a better idea. We turn their own tactics against them." Over the next 6 months, the Orthani's covert network collapsed from within. Agents were captured before they could act. Communication channels were compromised. Safe houses were exposed. Most devastating of all, false information fed through captured agents created paranoia within the Orthani hive minds. The Orthani began to suspect each other. Internal purges weakened their government. Their effectiveness as a military power declined rapidly. And all of it happened without humanity firing a single shot in retaliation. "This is brilliant," Taiyang admitted, "but also ruthless." "They tried to destroy us," Guno replied. "I am simply ensuring they cannot try again." While the shadow war played out, humanity faced a different challenge. The Luminar, the energy beings who considered themselves the most enlightened species in the galaxy, approached Taiyang with a proposal. 3 Luminar representatives materialized in his office on Earth. They were vaguely humanoid shapes of golden light, beautiful and somehow condescending. Admiral Taiyang, the lead Luminar, spoke, its voice like music. "We have watched your coalition with interest. You have achieved something remarkable. We propose an alliance. Together, the Luminar and humanity could depose the Veltari and establish a new galactic order." "With the Luminar in charge?" Taiyang asked mildly. "With the Luminar and humanity as co-leaders," the Luminar corrected. "We possess wisdom accumulated over eons. You possess innovation and drive. Together, we would be unstoppable." Taiyang stood and walked to his window, looking out at Earth below. "I appreciate the offer, but we did not break free from one set of overlords to become overlords ourselves." The Luminar flickered in what might have been confusion. "You would refuse leadership? You could shape the galaxy according to your vision." "The coalition stands for voluntary association between equals," Taiyang said firmly. "Every species has the right to govern itself. We do not impose our will on others. If the Luminar want to join the coalition as equal members, you are welcome. But if you want to rule, you can join the Veltari in irrelevance." The Luminar departed without another word. Taiyang knew he had made an enemy of a powerful species, but he also knew that the coalition's principles were more important than expedient alliances. The coalition held its first General Assembly on a newly constructed space station called Unity. 43 species sent representatives. Some were members, others were observers, and a few came simply because they had heard rumors of something new and hopeful. The assembly chamber was designed without tiers or hierarchy. Every species had an equal space, arranged in a circle so no one sat at the head. Prime Minister Yuna Huang opened the assembly with a simple statement. "We gather not as subjects and rulers, but as equals. Each species here has been rejected, ignored, or oppressed by the old powers. Today, we decide together what kind of galaxy we want to build." The debate lasted for 3 weeks. Species argued about trade rights, territorial disputes, and mutual defense obligations. There were moments when it seemed the coalition would collapse before it truly began, but Minho Song's careful drafting held it together. The coalition charter established clear rules while respecting each species' autonomy. It created a common defense without requiring anyone to surrender sovereignty. It promoted trade without allowing any species to dominate. The critical vote came on the question of the concordance itself. Should the coalition offer them a chance to reform, or should they simply ignore the concordance and build something entirely new? Taiyang argued for giving them a chance. "The Veltari are ancient and proud. They will not join us willingly. But if we extend an offer of peace, we take the moral high ground." Others disagreed. "They rejected us. They tried to destroy us. Why should we offer them anything?" The debate was fierce. Finally, Taiyang spoke. "I was there when the Veltari refused humanity a place at their table. I heard their contempt. I felt their dismissal. But I also understand fear. They fear change because change threatens their power." He paused, looking around at representatives from dozens of species. "We offer them one chance. One offer to reform their concordance into something better. Democratic governance, equal representation, free trade. If they accept, we work together. If they refuse, we move forward without them." The vote was close, but the motion passed. A delegation was sent to the Concordance Council with a formal proposal. The terms were clear: dissolve the hierarchical structure, establish democratic governance, grant representation to all spacefaring species, and guarantee free passage through all Nexus gates. The Veltari's response came within days. It was brief and absolute. "The Concordance recognizes no authority but its own. The coalition is illegal. All member species are in violation of galactic law. This is our final statement." When the message was read to the General Assembly, silence fell. Then slowly, representatives began to stand. One by one, every species rose to their feet, a silent declaration that they would not be intimidated. Yuna Huang addressed the assembly one more time. They had their chance. From this day forward, we recognize no authority but our own. Let them keep their concordance. We are building something better. 7 years after the concordance rejected humanity, the galaxy barely resembled what it once had been. Da-Hyun Kim sat in the Coalition archives, recording an oral history interview with retired Admiral Taeyang Park. She was a young historian, fascinated by the rapid changes that had transformed galactic civilization in less than a decade. Her job was to preserve the memories of those who had lived through the revolution. When they refused us, Taeyang said, his voice still strong despite his age. I was angry, humiliated. But more than that, I was determined. They thought saying no would keep us in our place. They did not understand that telling a human no is the fastest way to make us prove you wrong. Da-Hyun smiled as she recorded his words. She had heard similar sentiments from dozens of interviewees. The rejection had not broken humanity. It had unified them. Outside the archives, the coalition thrived. 38 species were now members, representing hundreds of billions of individuals across thousands of star systems. The economy was booming. New technologies emerged monthly. Culture and art flourished as different species shared their knowledge and traditions. The concordance, meanwhile, had shrunk. Only 19 species remained loyal to the Veltari, down from the original 47. Their economy stagnated. Their technology, once considered advanced, now looked old-fashioned compared to coalition innovations. Young members of concordant species looked enviously at the freedom and opportunity available in coalition space. But not everyone in the concordance was content with decline. The Orthani, having suffered humiliation and internal chaos, had undergone a transformation that shocked the galaxy. A reform faction within the Orthani hive minds had been growing stronger. They had studied humanity extensively, trying to understand how such an individualistic species could defeat their collective might. What they learned changed them. The AI. Reformers began advocating for greater autonomy within the hive minds. Individual Orthani should be allowed to make independent decisions. Diversity of thought made them stronger, not weaker. It was a radical idea for a species that had operated as unified consciousness for millions of years. This led to civil conflict. The traditional Orthani saw the reforms as a betrayal of their essential nature. The reformers saw it as evolution. The conflict turned violent, with different hive mind factions fighting for control. The coalition received a desperate message from the Orthani reform leader. We request assistance. The traditionalists will destroy us rather than allow change. We do not ask for military intervention, only for sanctuary and humanitarian aid. The debate in the Coalition Council was intense. Many species wanted revenge for the Purge fleet and the terrorist attacks. The Orthani had tried to destroy them. Why should they help? Minji Kang, now the Coalition's science director, argued passionately for helping. We are not building an empire of vengeance. We are building a civilization of possibilities. If the Orthani want to change to become something better, we should support that. That is what the Coalition stands for. The vote was close, but support won. The Coalition provided sanctuary to Orthani refugees and sent humanitarian aid to reform-controlled territories. They protected supply convoys from traditionalist attacks. They offered technology and expertise to help rebuild Orthani society. It was a calculated risk. If the reformers lost, the coalition would have supported the wrong side. But if they won, the most dangerous military power in the old concordance would become an ally. The Orthani civil war lasted 18 months. When it ended, the reformers had won. The new Orthani government was decentralized, allowing individual hive minds to operate independently while maintaining loose coordination. It was a compromise between their collective nature and newfound respect for diversity. The reformed Orthani applied for coalition membership. The debate was even more intense than the decision to help them. Could they trust a species that had tried to destroy them just a few years ago? Taeyang, though retired, addressed the Coalition Council. I fought the Orthani. I lost friends to their attacks. But I also believe that people can change. Species can change. If we reject them now after they have worked so hard to transform themselves, we become what the Concordance once was. Judges who decide who is worthy and who is not. The Orthani were accepted as provisional members with a 5-year probationary period. It was a controversial decision, but it sent a powerful message. The coalition truly was different. It believed in second chances and the possibility of change. The Veltari watched these developments with growing concern. Their ancient civilization, which had dominated the galaxy for 12 millennia, was becoming irrelevant. Species they had considered inferior were building something that attracted members away from the Concordance. The Veltari speaker, the same being who had rejected humanity 7 years earlier, requested a private meeting with coalition leadership. The meeting took place on a neutral space station, with tight security and careful diplomatic protocols. Prime Minister Yuna Huang led the coalition delegation. Admiral Taiyang came out of retirement to attend. Minji Kang and Minho Song were also present, representing science and law respectively. The Veltari speaker floated before them, its crystalline form less radiant than Taiyang remembered. It looked tired, if such a being could look tired. "We wish to discuss terms of coexistence," the Veltari began, its voice lacking the absolute authority it once carried. "We are listening," Yuna replied calmly. The Veltari seemed to struggle with what came next. "We miscalculated. 7 years ago, when we rejected humanity, we believed we were protecting galactic stability. We saw your species as a threat to the order we had built." "You were right," Taiyang said quietly. "We were a threat. We still are. But not the kind of threat you believed." The Veltari's light pulsed. "Explain." "You thought we would threaten through violence and conquest. Instead, we threatened your monopoly on power. We showed other species that your way was not the only way. That scared you more than any weapon we could build." There was a long silence. Then the Veltari speaker said something that shocked everyone in the room. "You are correct, and we must confess something. We feared you because you reminded us of ourselves." The being seemed to gather itself before continuing. 12,000 years ago, the Veltari were like you, aggressive, innovative, dangerous. We built the Concordance to prevent other species from threatening us as we once threatened others. But in seeking safety, we became stagnant. We created a system designed to prevent change because change meant uncertainty. "And now?" Yuna asked. "Now we see that preventing change only delayed the inevitable. The galaxy moves forward with or without us. We can either adapt or fade into history." Minho Song leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Not surrender, not submission. Coexistence. The Concordance will reform. We will establish democratic representation. We will open our gates to free passage. We will compete with the coalition fairly, through trade and diplomacy rather than force and intimidation. The galaxy will have 2 major powers," Minji observed. "Yes, and perhaps that competition will drive both of us to excellence. We will keep each other honest." Taiyang studied the ancient being. "There is something else. You mentioned you keep records of species rejected from the Concordance. I want those names. Some of them might want to know there are other options now." The Veltari agreed without hesitation. "You shall have them. It is the least we can do." The negotiations continued for weeks. The result was not a merger, but a framework for peaceful coexistence. The Concordance would reform its internal structure. The coalition would respect Concordance territory. Both would compete for new members through appeal rather than coercion. Trade between the 2 powers would be regulated by mutual agreement rather than one side's dominance. It was not perfect, but it was workable. More importantly, it meant the galaxy could move forward without another devastating war. The Concordance began its reforms, slowly, painfully. Democratic institutions did not come naturally to civilizations that had operated as hierarchies for millions of years. But change, once started, proved difficult to stop. Meanwhile, the coalition continued to grow. Using the Veltari's records, Da-Hyun Kim helped contact dozens of species that had been rejected over the centuries. Some were primitive and not ready for galactic civilization. Others were advanced, but had been deemed unsuitable for various reasons. One by one, these rejected species received the same message. You were told you were not good enough. We were too. We built something different. Would you like to join us? Many accepted. The coalition became truly diverse, representing species at different technological levels with different governmental systems, different values. The only requirement was respect for the basic principles: voluntary association, mutual defense, free trade, and equal representation. 10 years after the rejection, a monument was unveiled on Earth. It was a simple table carved from stone, but enormous, large enough to seat hundreds. Representatives from over 100 species attended the ceremony. Da-Hyun Kim, now the coalition's chief archivist, gave the dedication speech. She had spent years collecting stories and memories from those who had lived through the transformation. They refused us a place at their table, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd.